Yeah, I don't know what you mean by changes. There's been nothing recently, as far as I can recall.
I thought
And most of the chatter has
um,
been getting on people on what it really is when someone thought it was something else.
that okay. I'm getting yep. You're right. I was reading Thomas's chat about the final accepted wording on 2200, and I thought that was a thing. But no, you're right. It's just clarifying questions. Um, so let's see.
Yeah, if you so I put together this tracker uh,
That's
for
right. Yeah, that's
you
been
so that
great. I need to
just
add that.
view the code side by side. So and I actually found two flaws in Pantheon, which I think they've fixed by now. One of them being that for 1884, they when they implemented self balance, they tried to do a caching solution. So they cache the balance at the beginning of the call frame and then just deliver that whenever self balance is invoked, which doesn't work. Um, Public advisory.
Nice. I just said that. I just updated the agenda. If y'all want to refresh your page, and agenda item one now has a link to Martin's tracker, so that's really helpful. Um, Looks like the Geth team has everything. Peter or Martin, do you want to elaborate on that at all?
Not much. So we finished implanting the EIPs and merged them in. We also enabled implemented the Istanbul configurability in the Genesis spec plus the flag to override it, so anyone can play around with it. Would be nice to put together maybe a multi-client thing to just play around with it. But from our
Okay.
perspective, we're waiting for other people now.
So as of today, we merged in uh, support in the Geth retesties department for Istanbul. We merged in support, so you can run also the EVM with Istanbul Genesis support. I mean the raw bare bones EVM, and yeah, we also merged in the postpone the override flag, which yeah, I'm hoping that other clients, at least Parity, implements that one as well. Uh, so in the event that we want to postpone it, we can do so, or rather, users can do so from the command line without downloading a new binary.
Nice. Um, the next client is Aleth, and the chart that Martin has is accurate as of 24 minutes ago um, when Gumbo on the agenda left a comment about the progress update for Aleth. And it looks like the next client would be Parity.
So we have the call data, the call data gas cost reduction merged, and we have all the other accepted EIPs are still for us. They are still pending PRs or haven't been implemented. As mentioned in the detail, we probably need till uh, 6th of September to finish the implementation. It's not only because we got the accepted EIP list late, but also right now we just happen to be in a really large code-based refactoring. So we try to have some really large refactoring PR open in our code base, and we probably want to merge them first before merge those Istanbul EIP PRs.
All right, understood. We already talked about Pantheon, and they are reflected in the chart. Trinity, um, as far as I can tell, they still have the Blake F EIP potentially unimplemented as the call data reduction unimplemented. Everything else looks either open or merged. Let's see. Nethermind.
Everything except blank is merged already. And the blank one, we're in the process. So we've already prepared a precompile and we found the library. We're connecting library, just need to make changes to extract this compression function. So it should be all soon ready and then ready to test.
Great. Am I missing any clients? Okay. The next thing I want to discuss are the recent benchmarking. Also, so there's one from Martin and there's one from Axic. I'll post the link to Axix's benchmarking right now.
So yeah, let me just clarify a bit. So the one that I benchmarked, it has nothing to do with the Berlin hard fork. Sorry, it has nothing to do with the Istanbul hard fork. It's only about Berlin one. I don't know if you actually
Oh,
want to do
yep.
that today or.
No, yeah, if it's Berlin, let's just skip it, but come back to it when we're talking more about the Berlin stuff. Um, and then it looks like there was some gas estimation made for the verification of Zcash headers by Axic. It's in a comment. I'll paste it in chat. And it has a link to. Let me see. This just happened, so I haven't read it at all. Oh, it's okay. It's in a comment. Um, so let's see here. In short, the call cost to compile 385,000 gas alone, not counting anything else. I could imagine the total cost would be something like 600,000 to 1 million gas. So I think that's just some interesting um, information about the Blake 2B EIP. Does anyone else have comments on that who might have read that or like understand more about what it means?
Well, um, I mean, I think so. One thing that Axic has proposed earlier is to reduce the gas costs for precompiles. And in relation to that EAP, which I don't recall the number on, um, this is, of course, interesting because if we reduce that, then this number could go by like an order of magnitude.
Hmm. Anybody else have comments? Okay. Next, we have decide the block number for Istanbul testnet fork. It sounds like, based on a few clients that still have some implementation to do, um, that we might not be able to make that decision today, but I want to hear everybody's opinions on that and see if this is something that we want to do today or not. Because I'm open to hearing others' opinions on that.
So yeah, what did we say? What was your estimates? September 6th, did I hear that?
Yeah, we probably need like 2 weeks from now. So the 6th of September.
And that's for your release to be out, right? So we probably need some buffer after the 6th of September to then hard fork the client, the test nets, correct?
Yeah, that's just a safe date for us. If we rush, we might get it earlier,
Yeah, yeah.
but
But I
yeah,
mean
we just don't want to rush.
yeah, that's the date just by which you feel comfortable having implemented the EAPs, not the one by which you feel comfortable hard forking the client, hard forking the test net.
Yeah, it's the one we're comfortable having all the things implemented.
Got it. And what's the release cycle like at Parity? Is it like um, just when you want to, or is it on like a time schedule?
We can do like we can do release like just after when we implemented all the yips. I think that should be all right. But probably like if we can have like at least a few days or a week buffer would be great.
Okay. Um, yeah, I think that if we have a short meeting next week or we decide on Getter what the number should be, I think doing it in a week would be safe because that gives you all, you would have a better idea of how much more time you need. And if it's anything more than a week, we can reevaluate. But if it's just a week, then we can pick the block number and start having clients release. Is that something that we can agree on, everyone, or does that sound a little too aggressive?
So I think it's just worth highlighting that if we do this, say that brings us to August 30th, where we pick a block, it'll be a week or two, I assume, after Parity's release, so mid-September ish. And it seems very well, it just seems impossible then that we hit the October 4th mainnet deadline, like 2 weeks of testnet before mainnet seems a bit reckless. Um, so it's worth probably just making explicit that this also means the mainnet hard fork date will slip unless there's something I'm missing. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I just have one comment related to the testnet date, and it's not related to implementation, but related to specification the gas stipend thing. So I still think we might just want to fix that issue before we actually hard fork the testnet because otherwise, if we decide to do something else for the 1884, then uh, like we cannot unfork things, and it may create a lot more complication and actually delay the mainnet further.
Sorry, I don't understand. Wait, uh, what do you mean we should solve right now when you say
Like
the?
for the gas stipend, I think we might want to uh, like rise it so that we don't accidentally freeze some contracts, right? The 1884 EIP 1884.
Yeah, but
Uh,
that one
oh,
doesn't touch
okay.
the gas stipend right now. But you're so you would propose that we do that one in combination with the general raising of the gas stipend from 2300 to something else.
Yeah, so I think like if I'm understanding this correctly, like you have done some analysis that we probably will freeze some contracts if we just apply it without a change to gas stipend. So I think we probably want to do something uh, just before we hard fork testnet, so that uh, like we like so that we don't like need to like do some really complicated things in the future.
Okay, I think I know which issue you're talking about. You're talking about the one where when we reprice the op code from 1884, then it might freeze up some contracts that are dependent on the gas cost being a certain amount in their contracts. Did I get that right so far?
Yeah.
And so what happens is we want to prevent that so we don't have to do anything tricky in the future to undo that mistake for stuck contracts. And the analysis has been performed by Martin, and they did find some contracts that would potentially break. And I forgot what the analysis was exactly. Martin, can you refresh my memory?
Yes. So there is an analysis on a GitHub repo of mine, and it's a bit hard to draw any sweeping general conclusions from it because in some cases the problem is that you have, for example, designated senders that are only a couple of senders are allowed to deposit to a certain contract, and those senders use the solidity mechanism transfer, which only sends 2300, and when that so therefore the senders can only send with 2300, and the recipients does S load. A notable example of that was Kyber. So in that particular case, an increased gas stipend would work. However, there are other similar cases where a fixed amount of gas is used, like 19,000 or 190,000 was used for some kind of similar call. And it's kind of hard to to and other potential things that could break is if a contract in the default function does a few log operations and also an S load. And there could be different ways to solve these problems. And I don't really think that there is one solution that would solve it for every case. And I don't even think that every case needs to be solved. Some contracts are dead and unused for like 500 days. Other contracts are still used, but they have built in capabilities to upgrade themselves, some kind of upgrade path. Which, I mean, it would be more work for the operators, uh, but it's not impossible. So given that there's kind of no really self-evident magic bullet to solve it, my personal thoughts is that we should just kind of go ahead, and if there's something which we fuck up, then that could be fixed in the hard fork following Istanbul. And at that point in time, the operators of contracts who have been destroyed by this, um, they can contact the old core devs, and it makes it easier to figure out what the best solution is that is sufficiently solves the actual problematic ones and not every theoretical corner case that exists on the blockchain, if you understand what I mean.
Okay, yeah, I think I got that. Basically, if we were to find a solution today, we may find out after the fact that it was not the best solution based on the feedback we get from the people with broken contracts, is what I kind of interpreted from that.
Not exactly. So so there was a proposed solution, but it's really hacky and weird. And our suggestion was that it feels weird to add a hacky solution for a case that might not be relevant. And the idea was that let's not add the hack in now, but we know what the hack could be. And then if we legitimately break something that we didn't know that we're going to break, then we can always put in the hack later. But let's not hack it before it's actually needed.
Well, don't we know it's going to break some though, or do you mean break some and people complain?
So yeah, we know it's going to break theoretically break things. We don't know, and all of those things can break in different ways. Some of them can break uh, because of a combination with S-load and log. Those could be solved by making log cheaper. Some other break because they just do a lot of S-load in the at the recipient, and those could in some cases be solved just by upgrading the contracts. Blah blah blah. So there are different ways to solve it. and there's not really one. The hacky solution would kind of open us up for attacks. So that's not optimal either. And Way's proposal, what he mentioned earlier here, to raise the gas stipend, it's kind of a can of worms in itself, because that brings us back to issues with reentrancy and state modifications. So that's yeah, we could have it in
But
mind.
I
It
think,
needs to be analyzed.
yeah, but like I think the which number is it? The fix for 1283 should already cover most cases for the obstacles for rising the gas stipend. What I really worry is that this could be a potential PR disaster. So the issue is basically uh, if we broke some contracts, then uh, they they like some contracts will ask us to like unfreeze it, and we could have a similar situation like the party multi-sig. So it's like all about specific contracts and all about to make sure some contracts are unfrozen. So it could be like a potential really political thing. And I just worry in if we don't fix them right now, like in the future, we may not have a chance for them to ever function at all.
Hmm. That's not a bad point. I would say that part of what can prevent that is kind of getting ahead of the um, any negative PR that happens by completely explaining the situation in ways everyone can understand, and how this would be a different case in a way that the way that contracts broke this time was not what some would consider an idiosyncrasy with solidity, but a side effect of a needed upgrade that happened at the protocol level and not a higher level. That's how I would explain it, but I might be getting that wrong, and I would absolutely consult with a lot of people before pulling something like that out there.
Like my main issue is I don't see why raising the gas stipend. Like I still think it's a simple operation, and we should have most reentry bugs related to that covered by the if we get the 2200 in. So I just think I still don't think why raising the gas stipend would be a big issue. So there's an
Well,
obvious solution.
the thing is, we currently there are theoretically up to 20 S loads you can do at 2300 gas. And if we want that still to be theoretically possible after we raise it to 800, that means the gas stipend needs to bump up to like, what is it, 16,000, something like that. And if you have the gas stipend at 16,000, then obviously you can do reentrancy and state modifications. And so it's still going to be like, where do we put it? And
But you can't do reentry, right? If any S star is below the gas stipend, then it would automatically fail after 2200.
uh, yeah, we'd have to modify it to 200 as well. And then all of a sudden, you would be unable to do state modifications if you have less than like 16,000 gas. But it would be better if you. So there have been a couple of suggestions to how to handle this. It would be better if you write down a proposal where you specify some exact numbers. I know the contract library guys have volunteered that if we want to play with some scenarios, such as, I don't know, increasing the gas stipend for one or lowering the log costs for another, then they can evaluate that against a set of affected contracts. So we could work with them to do some automated analysis of scenarios. But I have not seen a definite proposal to how we can solve everything.
Martin, something maybe controversial, but I've been thinking about it for a moment, and I think that we can introduce something like a transaction counter of S-load calls and only invoke the raise of the S-load call cost after. No, sorry, that wouldn't work. But like we could potentially make a progressive cost, but like not too complex, but some kind of progressive cost for those operations.
Yeah, is it possible that we could like that either discuss it on fellowship, alternatively if people file tickets on this security EAP 1884 security EAP 1884 security repository, file tickets with a proposal for how to fix it. I don't know what's the best form.
Yeah, I'd say a combination of the All Core Devs Gitter channel announcing the analysis and commenting on, I mean, I guess just cover all bases, Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians, as well as trying to merge information in the security considerations of the EIP. Is that the third one you mentioned, Martin? Security considerations, or is there a whole nother repo?
Well, I pasted a link to the repo in the PM for the quarter meeting.
Oh, that's right. So yeah, if we could basically store the analysis in the repo and then have a discussion on the chat and Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians, that seems sufficient for getting the word out amongst the core developers for any proposals for something like this. But I agree with Martin that there needs to be something a little bit more um, like formal proposed about what's going to be the best way if we're going to um, put some solution in before the hard fork, what that solution would be. Are there any other comments on this? Anybody have an idea or stuff like that?
My comment is that this feels like a unique circumstance because it's kind of one of the first times this has happened. At least the idea of an intentional change that does have some breaking changes that also is kind of the promise of what ETH1X needed to be, or the observation. So while this one case, like maybe thinking about it from solving this exact case, as we keep moving forward, this will happen more, especially if we get into state rent. And so the general case of how to approach this coming from this specific one, I think is worth thinking about.
Just want to comment. There's actually a really easy way to fix those things once forever with a breaking change. So we can. This is just an idea. So we can just do a conversioning of version 0, and then for version 1 we remove any opcodes related to gas. So we make it so that the contract developer cannot make any assumption about the gas cost. So all those gas issues will just not happen forever. And from that version 1, we can change the gas cost whatever we want for how many times we want to do future upgrades or whatever.
Yeah, but I don't see that being a solution because we still have the non-versioned things, right?
Yeah, we
They
still
can
have the
still they can still
non-version,
bloat the
and
state with at low gas costs, so it doesn't solve the problem.
yeah,
We
right.
would need to
So
layer it. We would need to layer it with something like charging extra for version 0 versus version 1.
And my point was even outside of gas costs, like there's a very large network of pseudonymous, permissionless, deployed, who knows what. Like there isn't a, hey, this contract is owned by this person, mail to. So just how to handle this situation where it's something we know could happen. How do we proactively say, hey, we're thinking about it, with the realization that it's kind of an impossible battle to reach everyone in the network. So someone will likely get upset. So it's a something.
Oh, you're muted, James, now. You somehow clicked mute.
Oh yeah, because I was done.
Oh, that was it. Okay. Sorry, it sounded like it cut off mid word, but I think, yeah, it was just early. Yeah.
Um, and
So
just to add a thought to that, so I mean, realistically, if Ethereum is going to be alive for the coming however many years, then we cannot expect never ever to break anything. So I mean, it's not. I don't think it will ever be possible to keep indefinitely running contracts that were deployed in Frontier. I mean, it would be nice, of course, and we should definitely strive for it. But if we say that we won't ever break anything, then that might actually be quite a heavy price to pay.
I actually disagree with that. I think the only reason why we are breaking stuff is just that EVM is not really designed for feature upgrades, but you can really make some simple change, like I mentioned before, just removing all the reference to gas to make EVM like good for feature upgrades, friendlier to feature upgrades, and there's a like you can make it so that it's really hard to actually break stuff, like to maintain really good backward compatibility.
Well, yeah, but you're talking about gas price changes now. So specifically, nobody thought that this would be an issue, and that's why nobody fixed it. Yes, we can now create a solution to fix the gas price issues, but I'm almost certain that next time there will be a completely different class of issues that again would need something special to fix it. So I think it's part of software development that you discover problems as you go along, and you need to figure out what to do with those problems.
But you
Having
can also like write proofs or theoretically prove that you don't actually like break stuff in any apparent way.
Yeah, of course, but what I'm saying is that if are you willing to pay the price of not breaking anything?
Like if there's a way to do that, I would definitely do that, because I think like that's the point for Ethereum, right? Because code is law. Like you don't want to break any.
Yeah,
It's a
I mean, but
di-
wait. I mean, we did back in the Shanghai attacks. We intentionally broke the attackers' contracts. That's what we did in the Tangerine Whistle, Spirits Dragon. We intentionally broke those contracts. And the problem, I mean, do we want to wait until the next round of Shanghai attacks, which targets our cheap S loads, before we do another upgrade of that, and at that time intentionally break those attacking contracts?
I mean, there's a major difference between someone attacking the network and we just fix it, than having a feature upgrades that is that breaks some non-attacking contracts. I think those are really two different things. And also, if you mention the attacking contracts, uh, like like it's still the issue of gas code. So uh, you can actually fix it in different ways that doesn't break those attacking contracts. For example, make the contract really expensive to run, so it cannot be used as attacking contracts anymore or stuff like that. But I still think like backward compatibility is quite important thing for Ethereum, and I think we should treat it carefully. But for this hard fork, I mean, this is just my I'm just sharing my opinion, but the issue with the 1884 is not like over my dead body, and if we go with it, I'm fine with it.
I think it's also important to consider the other side, not just where a change could break a contract, but where a change would be benefit to another contract. Like, for example, the reducing of gas costs. Like, Hayden came into the Alcor devs and said, this is something that would be great for Uniswap. Redeploying based on a versioning would be really difficult for them. So there are people who would benefit from having a breaking change happen, and there are people who would detriment from having like a change that's happened universally or not versioned. And I think just we have to swallow both pills if we want to do one.
I guess, James, the only thing is it's not a thing where we're swallowing both pills, because what Way's proposing is putting in something that saves the old contracts while reducing the cost. So that's kind of an idea for um, something that will help with the PR and not make people upset, and keep Ethereum's contracts in a state where, at least for the moment, we can say um, the code will, for the moment, run as intended without breaking a contract, except for all the other times we've done it.
Doesn't Way's idea has to be implemented in addition to 1884, right? It's not like
Just
we
to
can do.
clarify, I don't think we can get what I said in Istanbul. So it would require a conversioning, and you could require another EIP for the version one breaking change. So I just don't think we can get it for Istanbul. But that's the thing I think will fix those kind of issue once and for all.
Okay. Well, it sounds like, yeah, for this, so you're saying for this issue, we wouldn't be able to code it for Istanbul, so we have a good amount of time for any proposals that come out about ways to fix this if we decide to fix this at all. Is that accurate?
Yeah, like what I'm just seeing my concerns that I think the current situation should be treated more seriously. Like we need to actually make a decision whether we want to just break those contracts or still want to fix it. Like this must like I think we probably want to like get more people like outside of the core devs, like from DI developers, whether they are fine with this or stuff. But this just my
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not like a nice to have. It's more of an existential. The chain will have serious problems if this gas cost doesn't change, right? Or it could in the future.
I don't think
agree.
this is like accidental. Like this SLR change from 200 to 800 is just a nice to have right this time.
What? No, I also consider it not a nice to have, but more important than that.
Can you expand on like why it's a necessary thing, Martin?
Uh,
Yeah, it won't change the decision, but yeah, I'd like to hear why it's more necessary than a nice to have, for if, like, for the reason of, if we discuss this with the community, how we can frame it.
Right, because these people are gonna, they're just looking at it from their baseline, like, oh, now it's harder to do this thing that I'm doing. But in reality, it's not like, it's not a punitive measure. We're not trying to make things more difficult, and they need to understand that it's like it has.
yeah, it's simply the case that as the state grows larger and larger, it becomes more IO intense to look up something, uh, a random key in our state try. So basically, an attacking contract which just spuriously loads random slots will be quite expensive. And I mean, when I say expensive, I mean it would be it would lead to heavy blocks. Yeah, that's it.
But I think in the future we still like when we have larger state, we still need to like rise the ice lord again, right? So I think we might like we might like all what I'm saying is we might just want to fix it, like find some way to fix it before deciding the testnet dates because
So
we yeah.
sorry, um, I didn't mean to interrupt if you.
No, I was just saying like we might just want to find some way to fix it before deciding the testnet date because like we will still have the same issue next time because when the state continue to bloat, we still need to rise the isolate gas codes again.
So I consider this to be a band-aid until we get some proper 1x changes that can reduce the state bloat. And I'm hoping that we don't have to raise it again, but instead uh, have some benefits from 1x that means we don't have to do it again. I totally agree that it would be really nice if we have some really good mechanism that stops the contracts from breaking. I have not seen any such solution that I think is the most ultimate of all of them. There are 3 or 4 different things that could be done. So let's continue that discussion and hope we get to something. Otherwise, I would be fine with just trying to solve it post facto.
We don't have to. So we already did. We are there's already the reality that this has to be solved after Istanbul as far as implementing it. So we can discuss it between now and then, as this is a like an important topic of conversation. However, a formal proposal will need to be written in order to have a baseline for a fix that is, something we could actually do that might be a little less hacky, or something that would be a little more clear. Um, is that somewhat what you were saying, Martin? That we don't need to focus on this second because it's not going to go into Istanbul anyway?
Um, no, I thought Wei meant that we shouldn't set a testnet date until we have solved this issue, but maybe I misheard him.
Yeah, like what I'm saying is this would be a factor to consider. We might want to have like several weeks just to focus on this issue, see whether we can come up with something good before setting the testnet date. Just so we like because once we have this on testnet, then it's really hard to for other solutions that might be more elegant to be applied on testnet. Like I like for this just to clarify, I don't mean to delay mainnet or something. So this is just purely for the testnet date, and I just think if we like don't like I would rather be safe than sorry for the testnet because if the testnet actually has some other issues or got delayed, then the mainnet will be delayed further.
On the other hand, the testnet is pretty good. It's actually pretty good to roll this out on testnets and see what breaks. And I think obviously a lot of crypto reads Twitter, but um, those who don't might find on the testnets that hey, our contracts broke, um, which I'd argue is a pretty good data point actually.
but we
Hmm.
already know it will break some contracts. So
Yeah, but we don't know what contracts, and we don't know which ones are still relevant. Uh,
yeah,
mm,
like what I'm mentioning is that this might be a PR issue. Like if we have like a list profile, like a testnet that is entirely new, not on Ropsten, then I'm perfectly fine to hide those actually testing, but there are a lot of people using the Ropsten testnet. So if we accidentally break a lot of contracts, then uh, like 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 it will lower the confidence for people who look forward to Istanbul mainnet.
I think that from a PR perspective, the core developers should worry less about that. I mean, that's obviously something to keep in mind. But there are people who are communications and PR people within most of our organizations, including Parity and the Ethereum Foundation and Pantheon and um, everywhere, that can get together and craft a message that is very clear about what the mandate for 1x was and how these things are going to go down now and in the future, so that the core devs don't have to worry about that and some of it can be deflected. I know I personally am probably going to write something to the extent of, there is a communications breakdown between major app developers and the core devs, and part of that is not having a position technically, that's a paid position for someone to do that full time and to find the best solutions for that. So I guess what I'm saying is there is the potential for some bad PR, but I don't think it's a showstopper for implementing something that has to save all the contracts. And I think there are people equipped to handle that. And I know the people from the EF Parity and Pantheon who could get together, and I think we're already in a chat room, who would help with that. So I think that should be less of a concern, honestly.
yeah, and I like to actually stress that um, the counter opinion that to ways that actually, since we probably will break some contract flows scenarios, it's important to roll it out on the testnets as early as possible so they can investigate how to remediate that situation and check if their upgrade paths are working or how otherwise they can fix it. That's my thoughts.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see that perspective. Are there any final thoughts on this? What it sounds like the conclusion has come to is we'll need something formal so we can discuss it on a technical level. What would be the benefits of it? And then we would need to describe on a more abstract level what we want the future narrative and direction of. Narrative's actually the wrong word. The future direction of what these breaking changes are going to mean and how we should best handle that, with the consideration that these DApps, some of them being very important to the community, could break, and making sure that we keep an ear open to people who have those concerns within the community. Um, that's somewhat what I got as a conclusion. Does anyone have anything else to add to that I kind of didn't go over as far as next steps? Okay. Thanks everybody. I thought this was a really good conversation to have so that we can kind of um, have expectations set for future upgrades that happen even post Istanbul. Do we have anyone that has an update on testing? I know that um, there was someone who mentioned that we should definitely have cross-client testing be one of the priorities. I forgot who mentioned that, but is that something that Is that something that anyone wants to comment about?
So I see Dimitri is not on the call. Dano has done some work. Dano, are you on the call?
Yeah, let me find my unmute button. Yeah, I've done some work putting together some unit tests using the retesteth framework, reference tests, not just unit tests, to try and get some basis to do some cross-client testing. The current retesteth, it does, one client at a time, so you just have to line them up and do them, one at a time. Currently, I'm debugging a different gets Blake2F is getting a different state root than with Pantheon, but with the tool we can get to the root cause of it. I've written some tests up for some basic self-balance, chain ID, and Blake2F, and I was going to be working on getting some of the other tests out there to make sure that they work as expected. Currently, they're sitting in PRs as part of the Ethereum test framework, so they haven't been merged in the main yet. I think before we merge a test in the main, I think we should have at least 2 clients who agree on the results.
Yeah. I don't think we need to be that careful about the merging to the developer branch because the clients need to, I mean, at least in Get's case, I think in Parity as well, we from time to time pull in the new test. It's not an automated thing.
Okay, same with Pantheon. But even when it's pulled in, we need validation, I think, from at least 2 clients at some point that, yeah, this is the right number and not something I made up.
Yeah, I mean, definitely at some point we're gonna have to all the clients need to pass the tests. That's the like baseline before we go live, kind of.
What's the status of Hive? I know Pantheon's not on Hive yet. I'm working on some Docker
Hive is
scripts to get
currently
that.
undergoing a major refactoring, and yeah, it's gonna be a pretty big change. So we're hopefully within the next like week or two, we're gonna spin up a new machine to put the new version of Hive on, and then transition from the old one to the new one. And yeah, obviously it's a priority to have that done when the tests, the Istanbul tests, are eventually done and exported into blockchain tests, because that's when Hive can start testing.
Okay, so Hive doesn't do the differential fuzzing testing yet?
No.
Or does it need Istanbul off of that?
Hive is not capable of differential fuzzing. So differential fuzzer is something that is done a bit more manually. And we cannot start that until the clients, in this case Parrot and Geth, actually implement Istanbul and make it configurable via Genesis or via command line flags. And Geth has reached that point, but there's still a couple of weeks until Parrot has reached that point, and until then we can't really do fuzz testing, differential fuzz testing of Istanbul.
Okay.
Cool. Any other testing updates from anybody?
Yeah, by the way, there are transaction tests that I've generated for the reduced call cost. I was just wondering, curious if anyone has actually run them or tried them. I'll take that as a no.
I'm not sure if we implemented the app. I haven't been able to dig into the code we've generated. We have stuff referring to transaction tests. I tried pulling them in and nothing broke, but that doesn't mean that I'm sure that we're running them yet. I still need to dig in deeper there.
Yep, thanks.
Cool. Anybody else have any comments? Okay. The last thing we'll need to do is kind of go over some of the action items. All the decisions from last all the decisions from last meeting are very straightforward, so I'm not going to go over them. The only one that's a decision that is now being changed is that all clients are required to have implemented all EIPs for the hard fork Istanbul one by the 23rd of August 2019. That's been pushed back to the 6th of September. And the decision for the block number did not happen today. So we're still discussing that, and we can also continue to discuss that via Gitter. So those are the two decisions from last week that have just been changed. Otherwise, all the decisions are pretty forward. Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
just one note on that. Given that we're pushing things back, it's probably worth making it. Not sure if official is the right way, but to say that the October 4th mainnet hard fork is probably not going to happen. So I just want to double check that with everyone here. Because if people are expecting sort of mainnet hard fork before DEF CON, it just seems impossible at this point.
I can agree with that. Does anyone else have any comments on the possibility of that? Oh, Dano, you're unmuted.
Sorry.
So who thinks that we're going to have to pick another date for the mainnet hard fork?
Yeah, so I think that's pretty obvious. So honestly,
Great.
I would say at least 1 month after the testnet is forked. So
That's kind of what I was thinking too.
Third week in November, and then we move it out again if we know we're going to miss it.
Let's not put a date yet exactly on it until we get the testnet number. Go ahead, Peter. I think I interrupted you.
no, I wanted to say the same thing.
Okay.
Let's wait for the testnet number and then pick something.
Cool. Anybody else have comments? And on the topic of PR, for those from CoinDesk listening in, we do not have a date for the testnet or the mainnet hard fork because we're taking taking care of the fact that we need to be very mindful and careful and security conscious of the upgrades that we're doing.
Good job, Hudson.
Thank you. I am not a trained PR person. Just throwing that out there. Does anyone else have any other comments that didn't make it on the agenda? Any other topics or things they want to say or discuss? Otherwise, I think we're done.
Yeah, quick poll. Do people want to start a new Istanbul testnet?
Well, one thing I think we should do, or would be nice to do, is to I wanted to do this for Constantinople too, is to do a shadow fork of Ropsten. So essentially, don't hard code a fork block number on Ropsten, rather just pick one and run a few clients and a few miners with that block number that would shadow the real testnet, and just see how things behave.
How would we keep that from corrupting the main testnet? Would we change the network ID on it, or would we limit
No,
ourselves to
no.
known peers?
Well, honestly, I would just leave them as is. So the two things would be connected, and then they would shove incompatible blocks to one another.
Right. Ropsten's got enough issues.
Yeah, okay.
Ropsten, as long as the shadow fork does not actually have higher difficulty or mining capacity than the mainnet Ropsten, it shouldn't be too bothersome for the regular Ropsten, right?
Yeah, probably the problem. Yeah, maybe there will be also a problem with synchronization, because none of the EIPs actually change difficulty or headers. So, for example, you cannot fast sync against the shadow Ropsten. So yeah, maybe it's not that good of an idea.
Right, that's a problem we always see. We always see all sorts of zombie chain forks coming from the Constantinople issues when we try and fast sync. So that's my concern of doing a shadow fork, because we're creating more of these zombie. If we're committed to take the nodes down after a while, that's fine, but some might sync to them.
Are there any platforms that can simulate a blockchain with traffic? Because I know Whiteblock has said before they have that and they open sourced it, but I don't know of anyone who has um, used it outside of Whiteblock people. I was thinking maybe consensus people might have, but I'm not positive.
Well, one other thing that we could try to do this whole shadow fork in a more controlled way is we could spin up a small cluster, just a few machines running maybe one client from each team or each one of each client. And instead of connecting them to Ropsten, to have them completely firewalled off of Ropsten and just have a transaction relay that that connects to Ropsten, actually is a full Ropsten node, and just pushes the transactions into this internal thing. And then we can do whatever we want without actually being afraid of spamming blocks into Ropsten back.
Right, we turn off peer discovery and we only connect to boot nodes with each other. That's a good solution, I think.
Well, I would go a bit further and define some. I would just start up a few cloud VMs and somehow firewall them off of each other just to make sure that no client can misbehave. And then,
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure Whiteblock could do exactly this. But I'll pass this along to Zach, and I'm sure he'd be interested in helping in some way if we can.
Cool. So we have Whiteblock, we have Peter's idea. I like Peter's idea a lot because that seems very controlled in a way that we can quickly identify if something goes wrong without having to mess with, um, like, seeing if Ropsten, how bad Ropsten breaks and having to do analysis on Ropsten itself. Am I getting that right?
so I'm not sure I followed the question. So the whole shadow fork idea was specifically not to break Ropsten prematurely, but have a cross client testnet that's actually has traffic. The bridge thingy, that's more or less to protect Ropsten from this shadow network.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Thanks. That's where I was disconnecting there. Okay. Um, do we want to decide to just do that right now at minimum? The shadow network idea?
That's unfortunately quite a large undertaking for someone to take on.
I'm not sure. So if we can spinning up some virtual machines and deploying some clients on them, that I mean, I don't know how much time it takes, but I assume it's not that big of a deal if somebody knows how to do it. So maybe we could ask Raphael to spin up a tiny Ansible cluster. As for the bridge itself, essentially what we need is a Ropsten node that is a bit hacked so that the transaction pool also forwards transactions to some external entity. I mean, if you guys want, I can try to hack it on Monday and see if it's viable or not.
Yeah, that'd be really nice.
Yeah, I agree.
I just got a new
Okay.
computer for my birthday, so I could turn my old computer into something. To running one of those.
Taking it old school. We don't need no damn cloud VMs. All right. Yeah, so we'll see what Peter does on Monday. We'll get message back from Whiteblock. Um, and yeah, happy belated birthday, James. I just got a message about that.
Congratulations.
Oh, James is on mute. We're not going to sing happy birthday because the lag time on Zoom would make it very, very bad, and I'm not a good singer.
Yeah, please no. but thank you
All right.
anyway.
Okay. Anybody else have comments before we end the call?
Well, actually,
Oh, when should the next meeting
yeah,
be?
exactly.
Oh, Peter, you go ahead first. Yeah.
I wanted to say the exact same thing.
So I don't think we can pick the block before the 6th, am I right? Or is that 6th just when all the implementations will be done, but we can have a block slightly before then?
I wouldn't pick a block number, so I would say that if Parity manages to implement it, or we have a fair consensus of the implementations by next Friday, then maybe we can talk on chat. But as long as we don't have the things implemented, I mean, we might as well decide today then. So
I see what you're saying. So let's wait 2 weeks. Does that sound good? Or were you proposing that we decide
no,
today, or
no.
were you,
Saying that deciding today or in 1 week is the same if we don't have the implementation done. So let's wait until the implementation is done.
great? Everyone good with 2 weeks from now?
That works good because if we stick with the 2 week schedule, we thread the needle with DevCon too.
Okay, and what time is the next meeting going to be?
That would be, I think, 22 UTC. Is that right?
I think
I think
so.
we do.
Did we do
We do like 14, then 22, and then 6.
No, wait.
the thing?
The one from last week was in the middle of the night, wasn't it? In Europe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was 22 last week, and then this week was 14, and so we need to do
6.
six.
Okay.
Six. We need to discuss in the future changing this because we have so little people joining now from all the time shifting.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It was a good idea, but I'm not sure that it's a net positive.
So can we decide
Yeah.
this now, or
We actually could. Do you want to just have this at the same time in 2 weeks?
Sounds good.
Because I think
Sounds
that,
good. It
yeah,
is North American.
let's.
so can we say it's at the same time in 2 weeks? And if anyone sort of feels strongly we should keep rotating the calls, then they can kind of make a case for it, and we can start rotating again after that. But personally, like, since we've started doing this, it seems there's been like minor benefits and major like I'm losing.
Detriments.
Yes, detriments. Thanks. I mean, one time, I like you, Geth thought the call was at one time and it was at another time, and then they come in a couple hours after, and it obviously makes for a less productive call. So it seems like, yeah, it's been, aside from the schedule, just like having everyone spend so many mental resources on figuring out when the call is has been pretty overwhelming. So I would personally push to just have the regular time, and if someone feels that it's really valuable to rotate, then they can step up and say it, either on this call or elsewhere.
Yeah, sounds great to me. All right, let's drop off this thing. Thanks everyone for coming, and see you in 2 weeks at the same time, 1400 UTC.
Thanks,
One,
Yeah.
can I add just
Thanks. Farewell.
Oh,
Oh, wait, did someone have
What's
something?
up, Peter?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that. So I didn't want. So Martin suggested that we should ask whether we wanted to do a new testnet, and essentially, I didn't want to derail that discussion completely and say that we should do a fork, a shadow fork. But I think people should maybe legitimately consider whether we want to reboot Ropsten maybe after Istanbul, because Ropsten is kind of big, and I don't think it's worthwhile to keep bringing that luggage along for too much longer.
I agree with this. One
Okay.
of the big issues we're going to come up with if ProgPal launches is we're going to need to do a fork transition. So
Well, yeah, but that should be fairly simple. So we can So since ProcPow is just empty blocks, so ProcPow only needs empty blocks. You don't need transactions. So you can always spin up an empty network and see if the transition works.
True.
And I mean, we
Okay,
already did
anything
that
else?
once with Langland.
Oh yeah, we did. Cool. Anything else?
Would the idea be to restart Ropsten on the same chain ID at 0, or pick a new chain ID for a second proof of work chain?
Nah, I would pick a new one. I mean, if somebody wants to keep Ropsten alive, I don't see a reason to explicitly murder it. Just
Eventually, the difficulty bomb will get it if we don't fork it.
yeah.
That gives people time to transition, though. There's some people who rely on Ropsten, not that they should, but they do.
Yeah, of course, that's what I'm saying. We don't. I mean, I don't want to explicitly murder Ropsten. Just if we want to restart a new proof of work testnet, we can create something else, and then eventually people can migrate, and then we'll just tell everybody that Ropsten won't receive the forks anymore. So period. Transition when you can, or when you want.
I mean, it would be interesting if Ropsten never got the prog pow and the new network was the one that got the prog pow. That would be one differentiator.
Oh yeah, totally. Okay. Any other comments? All right. We don't murder testnets. We only make new ones. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Great job, Hudson.
Thank you.